Does that say start broadcast? Or say end broadcast? It says start. Oh, okay, so we are on the air. Wow, okay, we got it. Oh, it's red. That means stop broadcast. Hey, guess what, folks? This is Fired Up. I'm Bob Irwin, and we are on YouTube live. Thank you for watching. We're going to get the technical stuff of this done one of these days pretty quickly. Anyway, welcome to Fired Up. I am Bob Irwin, the host for the show. We are broadcasting from the law office of Alan Butel in downtown Las Vegas. Alan is a frequent guest on Fired Up and lets us use space in his office to do the broadcast, which we appreciate. This show is about guns, related political things, and mostly self-defense issues. We are on Radio KSHP 1400 AM. This show is rebroadcast on Sunday mornings from 9 to 10. And on YouTube, we're going live right now, and it will stay up forever. So you can look up the website on YouTube, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, and discover what I said that was totally wrong 3 years ago, and it's still there, which is why sometimes I feel like Hillary Clinton, you know. I can't believe I said that. Yes, I did. Anyway, check us out on Sunday when you're on your way to church if you want to hear the radio broadcast. Tonight's guest is retired Metro PD homicide detective Phil Ramos. Phil, welcome to the show again. A little bit of your background for our listeners.
Always a pleasure to be here, Mr. Bob. I'm retired from Metro, 33 years at Metro. My last 12 were in homicide. Handled about 340 homicides and just as many, if not more, suicides and many officer-involved shootings. Retired now, just taking it easy, doing some occasional private investigation stuff related to suspicious deaths or accidental deaths, and then coming down here and playing on the show with Mr. Bob.
I appreciate that. Phil leaves out that he and his partner, Jimmy Vaccaro, had the highest solve rate of any duo, I think, in the entire country. Honored for that several times. He is a brilliant homicide detective. I'm saving to really embarrass you a letter I got from a lady who was a wife of a victim that you helped. I'm saving that in the back here just to read on the air, you know, to make you feel like terribly embarrassed. If you have a question or comment about the information on the show, please feel free to send a text or an email to bob@firedupmail.com. There's a sign right behind me. I also have an office recorder. If you would like to talk to me or one of our guests about something, you can call that number. I check that tape at least once every 24 hours. So I will get back to you if you want to call, or again, send me a text or email to Fired Up with Bob Irwin. We do try to answer every question that comes in by text or phone if necessary. There are several hundred uses of defensive firearms every week in the United States. Not often covered by the mainstream media. They tend to cover bad shootings and misuse of guns and things like that. So we try to counterbalance that a little bit by showing some, or going over some cases where individuals used a gun for self-defense purposes. Most of them are good shootings. Some are questionable. Once in a while, I'll throw in one that's really stupid, but it has, there are to indicate to you what you might do if you were in the same position. So we'll generally not use the names of the people involved and use the location, the state, because the laws vary from here to here. And I've got to actually add one more thing. We're talking generally about how the law applies in Nevada. Phil's background is in Nevada, so is mine. The laws are different depending on the state or the county or sometimes the city that you are in. So if you're involved in an active case, you have shot somebody and want advice, you need to talk to a local criminal defense lawyer. The advice we give out for what you would do in Nevada is going to be wrong if you're shooting us in New York City, etc. From California to Nevada are vastly different even. Indeed. So we will give you advice that will keep you hopefully out of court and hopefully out of jail in most circumstances, but it won't necessarily apply in the community you live in. Okay, so there we are with that. Now, we will start off. This is from the source on this one is from WJXT News for JAX in Jacksonville, Florida. This happened on the 21st of June, a few days ago. A Chinese food delivery driver shot at least one of three teens who apparently set up the driver with an intent to rob him. The guy was delivering Chinese food. He's not necessarily a Chinese person. When I say a Chinese food delivery driver. The bad guys apparently called a company called Hot Wok Chinese Food to an order and had it delivered to a vacant home. The vacant home was for sale, but the for sale sign in front of the home was missing. So the driver shows up at the home. They approached him from behind, held him at gunpoint, according to the police. Witnesses told the media the driver threw the food at one of the robbers, pulled his Glock from the holster, and fired 4 or 5 shots. He hit at least one of the teenage robbers. Their ages were not disclosed. They were young teenagers, I discovered from the police reports, but they didn't want their ages exposed on the air. So a bag of food and the receipt were still left behind the next morning. Crime scene tape was also on the ground where neighbors saw the whole thing unfold. Neighbors recorded a video of the wounded robber being transported to the hospital. The other 2 would-be robbers ran away. Not unusual for a robbery team. One guy gets shot, everybody leaves him and runs. One neighbor told the media, "Is that money really worth it? The delivery driver said he had $200 at most on him. Y'all plan to kill somebody over $200? You don't think about innocent kids next door and the next family in the next house?" As of this writing, the second robber has been arrested and one is still on the loose. The names and ages of the robbers, I said, have not been released due to the ongoing investigation. Food delivery drivers are always at risk. Those of you in that business are aware. It is probably next to cab drivers the most dangerous thing you can do, or run a convenience store, but they're all tied. It's apparently planned because they obviously removed the for sale sign from the house. And when the robber then approached the victim from behind, they weren't able to get into the house, so they just removed the for sale sign, cleaned up the house, I guess, so it didn't look vacant. And there they go. Had this individual not been carrying his firearm, this would very likely be a murder. The video recorded by the neighbor's security camera should make this easy for the prosecutors to figure out what happened in the case. What do you think?
Oh, well, this is very simply a very defendable situation for the delivery person. He clearly was at risk, immediate risk. The threat was imminent. It was a felony in progress. He was outnumbered, and he had absolutely, in my view, every right to defend himself in the manner which he did, and he did a good job. He was outnumbered 3 to 1, guns versus guns, and kudos to this young man. Well, I shouldn't say young man. We don't know that he's a young man, but the driver defended himself, and very legitimately so. I don't see a problem at all with this case.
Yeah, I know. The neighbor's comment kind of got to me that the $200 is not much money.
Well, in some cases, normally you think, no, this is $200. You're going to rob and kill somebody for $200. Desperate people will rob and kill for $10, for $5, for a pack of cigarettes. Normal thinking individuals say, $200, that's not worth it. But in the criminal world, in the underworld, $200 is a whole lot of money to some crackhead that's looking for his next hit.
And the teenagers obviously don't think ahead. Their only plan is, what am I going to do in the 5 minutes after the robbery? I'm going to spend the money here, not the risk they're taking of destroying their whole life.
Or getting killed.
Yeah, or getting killed. And so the rule there is, delivery driver, if you're allowed, carry your firearm.
Yeah.
If you're not allowed, find another company. That's just too dangerous of an occupation. I mean, had a grandson who was a pizza delivery driver for a few years and scared the bejesus out of me because I deal with this all the time, and you know, it's anyway. Mercury News and KTVU Television 2 reported on the 21st of this month in Brentwood, California. Local police were investigating a fatal shooting of 2 men Wednesday night at a home in the 200 block of Birch Street. The 2 men apparently had a gun when they entered the garage of the home about 11:15 p.m. That was on the night before this was written, on Wednesday. Brentwood Police Lieutenant Walter Ogrodnik said. A neighbor stated that this homeowner often watched television in the garage with the door open, meaning the garage door that faced the street. Not a good idea, but we'll go on from there. Preliminary information shows this to be a home invasion robbery, the lieutenant said. 2 suspects, one with a firearm. They presented a threat. The shooting was prompted in self-defense. When ordered to open the garage safe at gunpoint, the resident was able to retrieve a shotgun from that safe and fire before the invaders could react to him. Both men were pronounced dead at the scene. The police would only identify them as residents of nearby Antioch who were in their 30s. Now, these are not kids at all. Surveillance footage from the neighbor's camera is aiding the investigation. That video obtained by KTVU TV2 shows 2 men apparently casing the area before entering the garage of the home. This is about 55 miles east of San Francisco in Contra Costa County. The homeowner was briefly detained but was not arrested and has not been charged. The victim was not injured and is cooperating with the police. Watching TV in your garage with the door open toward the street late in the evening is really a tempting target for criminals who are just wandering around the area looking for targets of opportunity. Mm-hmm. The safe they ordered apparently contained a gun. Surprise! Unlike the neighbor in the media, police have released few details, and the investigation continues. Notice a lot of these are comments from neighbors and so forth. The police have been fairly quiet about this. When you're this guy, you're involved in what appears to be a home invasion. Cooperating with the investigators is fine, and we may discuss this, but I would recommend you avoid the why you fired. It's okay, obviously, to tell the police that arrive what happened. You know, this is my house. The guy came in the door, he pointed a gun at me, and I shot him. Why you shot him is what seems to get people in trouble in lawsuits. When you say, well, he, presented a threat, and I know that if I'm presented with a deadly situation, I can kill the guy, so I killed him. Lines like that can be seized upon by the lawsuit lawyers. Yeah. So, under stress of having just killed somebody, this is not a normal thing that takes place in everybody's life. So, try to consider your statements and kind of limit them to what happened, not why it happened. And maybe the homicide detector will have a different view of that.
Well, there's a couple of trains of thought on this. One is, we live in a world now where it used to be safe to sit there in front of your house and watch TV and sit in the garage and have a beer or two and just not worry about anything. It's not like that anymore. In our own city here in Las Vegas a few years ago, we had an off-duty police officer sitting in his garage, just tinkering and stuff. Later at night, 2 people came in, 2 bad guys walked into the garage door that was open, and killed him. Yeah. It's sad.
I remember that was just a random crime.
Yeah,
they looked for a long time to see if they were targeting this officer.
Right.
Turned out they weren't. There was just some guy in a garage.
Yeah. They had no idea
fixing his car, as I recall.
Yeah. So, we don't live in the same world that we used to. Times are so different, and the fact that he had a gun in the safe is great, but it didn't do him any good. If these bad guys had not seen the safe or not demanded that he open the safe. They just came in to rob his purse and whatever he had in his pockets, and he wouldn't have had access to the gun. He wouldn't have been able to get it out. I mean, it takes a little bit to get a gun out of a safe, especially if it's a big one. It's in your garage. So if you're going to have a gun and you're going to be sitting out there in a situation where there's a potential for danger, you know, the only thing I could say is don't put yourself at risk. If you're able to defend yourself, then defend yourself. And following up on what Bob said, you know, these excited utterances that people make when the cops first show up, I mean, it's a traumatic, terrible situation. There's a dead guy, 2 dead guys, you shot him, and what happened? What happened? Oh my God. The thing that I would suggest, if you're able to remember this, police officers never shoot to kill. Security officers never shoot to kill. You shoot to stop the threat that's being presented in front of you. You shoot to defend yourself, to protect your family, to protect yourself. Your intent is not to kill someone. That verbiage is terrible to use. Your intent is to stop the threat that's being presented to you. If death results if there's a death resulting from the actions that you take to defend yourself, that's what happens when you fire a gun into someone's chest. So my only train of thought on this is just try to remember that you're not shooting to kill somebody. You're shooting to protect yourself and to stop the threat of you being killed.
Precisely. That's the hard thing. When you're under this kind of stress, you think you're going to say something that's helpful. And like I say, the lawsuit lawyers are out there waiting for you to say, the guy came in with a gun, so I killed him.
Yeah.
No, you prevented him from killing you.
Exactly.
It's the other way around. We're always talking about training and carrying firearms and so forth. If you're going to have a firearm in your home, or you're going to carry one with a concealed carry permit, if you need one of those where you live, where I used to work at the gun store in East Tropicana, they teach the basic concealed carry class every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. They run the class every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. So many of the places that teach the class, you get on a list, and then only 2 people sign up. So you drive over there and can't get in. The gun store, besides using an outline that I wrote, does the class Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You can sign up online. It starts at 9 a.m. First half is for new permits and renewals. Call them at 702-454-1110 or find them at thegunstorelasvegas.com. Sign up online. It's relatively inexpensive, and you end up with a permit, and they will run the class when you're there. This is from al.com, alabama.com. This is on 6/22 of 2017 in Mobile. I guess that's pronounced Mobile.
Mobile
County, Alabama. A homeowner shot 3 suspects during an attempted home invasion in Theodore, that's the name of the town, on Thursday afternoon, the Mobile County Sheriff's Office said. Detectives said a 62-year-old U.S. Marine veteran shot the suspects as they were trying to get into his home on Thomas Road. According to authorities, the suspects had broken into the man's home before, meaning several weeks before, and threatened to harm him if he reported the incident to authorities. This happens a lot. The homeowner, however, did report the incident, apparently aware of that. When the suspects returned to his residence this Thursday, the day this happened, they fired several rounds through the front door. The victim was hit by one of those in the shoulder. The victim returned fire, injuring all 3 suspects. The investigator said 2 of the suspects drove away from the victim's home to a Dollar General store in the 10,800 block of Dauphin Island Parkway, if you know where that is. We're talking about Alabama. Deputies arrived at the store to find the 2 suspects on the ground. 2 of the 3 suspects shot by the 62-year-old Marine veteran when they invaded his home were denied bond when they appeared before a judge on Friday morning. The victim and suspects have been transported to a local hospital. Their conditions are unknown, unreported anyway. The sheriff's office said the suspects are in custody while at the hospital and will be booked into the Mobile County Metro Jail when released from the hospital. The returning criminals fired through the door. This is an apparent murder attempt for him, basically ratting them off to the police. It's not clear in the reports whether the Marine fired back through the door that was closed or through the open doorway. In either scenario, his life was clearly in danger. We obviously don't talk to people about firing through a closed door at somebody. You need to see who you're shooting. Although I've got another story about somebody firing through a door also. The investigators in the court order referred to the incident as a home invasion, so we can assume they were coming in when shot, which indicates to me the door was open from reading this. Criminals underestimated the toughness of the Marine. He got hit, they tried to intimidate him, and to hell with that, he went after him anyway. I'm proud to say my grandson is now a United States Marine.
Nice.
Semper Fi, you guys.
Yeah, very good. Very good. You know, you gotta smile and be a little proud of this incident because, you know, this is a Marine defending himself. Getting back to the logistics of it, I wonder what the first incident was about, why he wasn't able to defend himself at that point, and the stupidity of these bad guys saying, don't call the cops or we're going to come back and kill you. Well, guess what? He did, and we don't know that there's insufficient details as to where they were standing when they fired through the door. Maybe they were just right at the door, maybe out the street. Who knows? We don't know. Either way, it doesn't matter. He was absolutely in 100%, in my view, defending himself and his family against these attempted murderers that were out in front of his house or on the other side of the door. So good job to the Marine. Stupidity does not reign anymore in Mobile, Alabama. And gosh, I hope they're able to recover quickly and get sentenced to prison as they deserve.
Yeah, that's something I neglected to detail out because the details are not clear. But when they had fired at him through the door, open or closed, and he fired back through the door, open or closed, it doesn't really matter. They were shooting at him. Yeah. Now he's firing in self-defense. It doesn't matter whether they actually made it into the house. Although I say the reports keep calling it a home invasion, so I tend to think they did. Otherwise, it would have been listed as a shooting or an attempt to murder, but not as a home invasion. And they use that terminology throughout the reports, including the court reports that said this is an attempted home invasion. Yeah. So obviously somebody got in somewhere, but either way, it doesn't matter. You're allowed to shoot back when somebody shoots at you.
Now, the one thing we need to remember on this, and Bob touched on this point, had the Marine been firing back through this same door and it was closed and he wasn't able to see who was shooting and where the shots were coming from, it would have been a very poor judgment call on his part because he doesn't know what he's shooting at. Clearly he's being threatened, bullets are coming through that door. But when it comes down to it, you have to be able to articulate, I saw this guy shooting at me, and so I defended myself. You can't do that if you're shooting on the other side of a door, which you can't see is on the other side of that door. And you have to remember, while he's defending himself and absolutely allowed to do that, he's also responsible for the damage those bullets coming out of his gun cause. If one of his bullets didn't hit the bad guys and went across the street and hit somebody in their house or on the sidewalk and injured them, he's responsible for that. Yeah. So just make sure if you have to defend yourself, you have a clear picture of what you're defending yourself from.
It would be hard to convince a 62-year-old Marine, but yeah, when there are rounds coming through the door, hide on the other side of the room, have your gun aimed at the door in case they come through, and wait for the cops to arrive. And I can hear this guy saying, "To hell with that! They're trying to kill me."
Right.
So I understand. Toughness is toughness, and they're shooting at him. If you have currently a firearms trust, we have an attorney that's a friend of mine, Jerry Creed. He does firearms trusts, particularly Class 3 trusts and elder law, if you're interested. If you have a firearms trust that is really in flux right now, I've explained several times on this show. If you have an old one that was done more than a year ago, you probably want to have another attorney look at it to see if it's still up to date. Laws are changing rapidly. ATF is getting very gun friendly with some of their newer policies since the new administration. And but your trust as written may be out of sync with what it needs to be. The wording is different now. So you might want to have somebody look at it. Jerry Creed, you can find him in the phone book, C-R-E-E-D, or he's in Summerlin, area code 702-806-7777. If you can't remember that, or it doesn't come out in your stuff, you want to look through the whole show again to find it, drop me a text at the address on the wall, and I will update you on that. WKVT TV 27 News, that's CBS affiliate, reported on the 23rd of this month in Laurel County, Kentucky. County Sheriff John Root says deputies were dispatched to a home off Robinson Creek Road Friday morning around 10 a.m. after a 911 call that a homeowner had caught a burglar inside his house. According to the responding deputies, the homeowner fired a shotgun at the intruder, hitting him in the upper torso. The suspect then, there's a typo there. You missed one there, proofreader. Then ran out the back door into a wooded area where he hid while sheriff's deputies were responding. After the deputies began to investigate the scene, when they arrived, they noticed a stray dog barking at the woods. That caused the deputies to go over and search what he was barking at, and they found the 40-year-old wounded suspect and arrested him and applied first aid. I hate it when a dog rats you off. A medical helicopter flew the suspect to the University of Kentucky Medical Center in Lexington for serious but non-threatening injuries. Upon release, he will be lodged in the Laurel County Detention Center. Deputies said they found multiple stolen items in the yard and on the suspect's person. The sheriff's office charged him with burglary in the first degree, theft by unlawful taking, criminal and mischief in the first degree, evading police, and third degree terroristic threats. That's one to just really get the guy. You don't want to be charged with making terroristic threats. First off, if you're certain an intruder is inside your home, it's probably best to call 911 and let the responding officers do the search. It's just standard procedure. Hide inside and let the guy come to you. That gives you the advantage if there's going to be a gunfight. However, it's 10 in the morning and most people think the burglars all work at night, which is wrong. Actually, more in the daytime, I understand now. Yeah. It's really hard to clear a house by yourself without severe risk. Being as you're going to probably do that anyway, be armed, shout warnings. Most intruders run if given a chance to flee. If you shout a warning, I've got a gun, get out of my house, 90% plus run away. Then you don't get to meet all the lawyers and all the judges and correction officers. Yeah. You're not going to do that, I know. You're going to go search your house. So be slow, be careful rounding corners. Make sure your eyes can see where the guy is. You don't get surprised. This story I was laughing when I was reading the reports. Not a good day for this criminal mastermind. First, the intended victim shoots him full of birdshot, and we're going to presume it's birdshot. He hit him in the chest, and the guy's going to be out of the hospital shortly, and he was not in critical condition, so it was birdshot that hit him.
Center mass.
And a stray dog points out your hiding place. The dog should win the reward for his actions like a bowl of kibbles and a good home. Somebody needs to adopt this dog if they haven't already. He's a crime stopper.
McGruff lives.
Yeah, it's just great. Pretty straightforward. I just love this because of the dog. It's just.
Yeah, and I mean, again, he's well within his right. there is that issue is, could you have done something else? Could you have taken cover or left the house, call 911? Was there an immediate and imminent threat to you? In this particular jurisdiction, we don't know if there's a castle doctrine or not. We don't know if you're allowed to shoot somebody that's in your house committing a burglary but not presenting a threat to you. Some jurisdictions don't allow that. Some jurisdictions do. We don't know in this particular case, but you always want to be safe. You always want to be safer than sorry. So if you're aware of what your ordinances are in your community, if you're allowed, or if your life is not in imminent danger and you still fire to defend yourself or your property, just make sure that you're doing it within the regulations of the community that you live in.
In some instances, you are allowed to fire to defend your property. There are states that allow that, and but if you're not, your life's not in danger, you're defending something else that is not a clear threat to a human, you may well be in the woods. So I'd be very careful. Taking somebody's life, even when they deserve it because they stole your car, is not a good idea. The downside is years in court and lots of lawyers' fees. A friend of mine, Michaela Nebel, she's a range master part-time at the gun store still. She is also the third-ranked female boxer in the United States. She is now working at her own boxing gym. It's called Real Boxing. If you have a child who wants to learn how to defend himself, nice, particularly a girl child, you can call Real Boxing. She's over there, 702-816-4657, teaching classes. Particularly, you want your teenage daughter to learn how to box. Mm-hmm. Michaela would be a great teacher. She's really a knowledgeable. Like I say, she's heavily rated in her weight class, and I hate to say that there's this chick who is 5'1" that can kick my ass, but that's Michaela. Call Real Boxing, 702-816-4657. Ask for Michaela. She'll get you set up. Good thing. This is a local case. See how we're running on time. We're looking okay. Las Vegas, KSNB News 3 reported this case on 6/27/16. There was some video on it. A local shopkeeper says an attempted robbery happened right before closing time last week. He never expected he would have to deal with a violent thief, but he told his co-worker to be ready for this particular customer. Video surveillance inside the wireless clinic near Eastern and Charleston Boulevard catches the robber kicking over a display case counter and then smashing the glass with his feet. Then he grabs some of the merchandise. The owner then takes charge by pointing his handgun at this violent jerk, who decides right away that to raise his hands and walk out of the store. The robber left empty-handed. The owner of the store said, this lunatic guy just came in. He had come in previously. He had that look in his face. I told my coworker to be prepared if something was going to happen. When the robber kicked the showcase over, you got to watch the video of this. This is a violent robbery. I told my coworker, don't let him go unless I'm going to go get my firearm. The owner said he never had his finger on the trigger and added that he did not want to hurt anyone. He hopes he never has to deal with another robber again. This is a strong arm robbery. Apparently the guy is unarmed, but violent. He actually kicks over the display case. The video is really, it is a violent robbery. The merchant gets his firearm. Had the shop owner been armed at the moment, imagine what could have happened. The interesting part of this, a local TV reporter who responded later in the day to do an interview with this shop owner found the guy now carrying his gun in a holster on his belt instead of having to go get it when the bad guy comes in. That's generally legal in Nevada. You're a business owner to carry a gun on your own property, of course. There are a lot of goofy little rules for that, but in general, we all learn from our mistakes. And this guy, apparently from the time of the incident to a couple hours later when the reporter showed up, he learned. Have your gun on you so you don't have to go get it when somebody's smashing your stuff in your shop.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny on this particular case. I did some commentary for this particular station, and this reporter is a friend of mine, and so we discussed the pros and cons of the case for his news report. This had a lot of dynamics to it. I mean, this guy comes in. His intent at the time he came in wasn't clear, but he's got the history that put this, big red flag. The shop owner was on alert for this behavior, and when it turns violent, when this guy kicks the display case over, and he literally just kicked it over, and it escalated into an act of violence, and he went and armed himself. There's a gray area right there. The violence wasn't particularly against the owner, it was against the property. So when he came out brandishing his gun and pointing it at him, it's questionable whether the threat was present to the owner. So would he have been justified in shooting? We don't know, because what you see on the videotape, it doesn't appear that the man was presenting a threat to the owner himself. He was just trying to help himself to some of his property. The great part about this is that the owner had the presence of mind to arm himself, to display his weapon and verbalize something to the bad guy, and the bad guy, in a very rare, I'm sure, display of intelligence, walked away without any of the property. So, on one hand, he lives to rob again, and the shop owner lives to defend himself again. It was a very good move on the shop owner. Kudos to him for being patient and being brave enough to display his firearm and protect himself. And knucklehead robber, maybe you should think twice before you do it again.
You wonder. I mean, I can't imagine going into any shop like that, these small convenience stores, smoke shops continually, and not expecting this with the independents, especially,
right,
that aren't chain stores that have some guy across the country telling them, don't have a gun, we'd rather you died than we lose any merchandise.
Yeah, the little mom and pop places.
The mom and pops, they all have guns, moron.
And so let's touch on that subject of, in this particular case, like in the earlier case we spoke about the gentleman in the garage who went into his safe to get his gun. This gun that the shop owner had was also in the safe, and he had to go back and retrieve it. And he learned from this incident, well, that gun's not doing me a damn bit of good inside the safe, so it's on my hip now. So, as a shop owner, as a shopkeeper, or an employee of that, you have to remember that. I mean, you've got a gun to defend yourself, good, but are you going to be able to get to it when it comes time to defend yourself? Most robberies and threats happen, bam, like that in a split second, and you don't have time to go get that gun. So if it's going to happen to you, you're better off having the gun on your person instead of having it locked up so you have to go get it. You can't tell a bad guy, time out, wait, hold on, let me run and get my gun, and then we'll do this again.
I've seen that happen where the shop owner keeps the gun under the cash register, so it's ready, but then he doesn't stand there the entire day.
Right.
He's across the place stacking shelves, and the gun might as well be in the safe because the robber is now between him and his gun.
And he can't get to it.
Put it on your person. Carry your gun, and if nothing ever happens, when you're 80 years old and retired and they're putting you in the box, give it to your grandson, and it served its purpose.
That's right.
Company called Grant Defense, client of mine or friend of mine. This is at 5580 South Decatur. It's the corner of Russell and Decatur in Las Vegas. It is right adjacent to the Dewey Animal Shelter. If you are there or know where that is. They make manufacture AR-15s and Glock pistols, or modifications of Glock pistols that are, the Glock pistols really have me just head over heels. They're really cool guns. They thin the frames out. They do amazing work. You need to go over there and take a look at these if you're looking at buying a carry gun, particularly. These Glock 19s and 17s that they rework are amazing. And anyway, they're called Grant Defense. You can look them up on Facebook and go over there and check out their Glock pistols and their AR-15s. They make great AR-15s, but the Glock pistols impress me even more. This is my etc. section that I put in here. If you have a event that your gun group is putting on, we'd be happy to mention it here. It's kind of a little commercial for anybody. If you send me a text to the phone number up there, an email, we will do it. I wanted to comment on the NRA now is heavily pushing Congress for a national reciprocity law. They have 200 co-signers to a bill to require national reciprocity on concealed carry permits. They believe that's a good idea. I believe that is a big mistake. What we need is national constitutional carry, that they make a law that says you can have the right to keep and bear arms wherever you happen to be in the United States if you're not prohibited from having a firearm, etc., rather than having the government write regulations for that. Sooner or later, maybe it's only because I'm old and gray, but right now we have a Republican pro-gun majority in Congress. What happens 8 years from now or 12 years from now when we have a Democratic or a anti-gun group in Congress and we have asked them to write the regs for carrying concealed weapons interstate? It's going to come back to bite us in the butt. I think this is a big error on the part of the NRA. I've been a member since I was 17 or something, and this is the wrong push, NRA. I'm not the only one on the gun side that believes that either. There's a growing group looking at that going, this is really short-sighted. Asking the government to regulate guns is a bad idea. Cal Guns Foundation reports that as today they had a hearing in federal court to try and stop the retroactive magazine ban in California. There's a bill coming up. They sued in federal court to get the federal government to say this is an unconstitutional law and get it stricken. Their hearing is today in federal court. We won't have the answer probably for several days because the court won't rule right away. They'll listen to it and then, you know, make their decision a week or two. What this does is it makes it unlawful to possess any magazine that holds more than 10 rounds of ammunition. In California, they become illegal, including grandfathered magazines. So all the ones that you told the government you own in California would become illegal. And you have a certain time span, 3 months or 6 months or something. It's a fair amount of time to either get rid of them out of state or destroy them or turn them into the police department. My understanding from the people that are pushing this bill is that criminals are also required to turn in their magazines that hold more than 10 shots. So they will be under the same restriction as the honest people. Not really sure they're going to do that though, Phil.
Honestly, who thinks of this stuff?
Like it's going to make a difference. The bad guys are going to. Yeah, I remember years ago when I lived in Los Angeles, and they had their assault weapon ban come up, and they banned all kinds of any magazine, you know, long capacity magazine, anything they defined as an assault rifle. And in doing an interview with a station at the time back then, I said, yes, there was a line of gangbangers around Parker Center lined up with their assault weapons to turn them into the LAPD. And the guy said, "Wow, did you get any pictures?" I'm lying. They didn't actually do that. Of course, the bad guys aren't going to turn in their now illegal magazines. They're already criminals. Anyway, so Cal Guns Foundation, you can find them at www.calgunsfoundation.org. Spelled out, calgunsfoundation.org. They are single-handedly taking this into federal court, which is expensive as all get out, and these guys are spending their own money. If you can donate to them, it'd be great, because trust me, Nevada people, whatever happens in California is going to happen in Nevada next time it goes around. So they're already trying that here, and it got thrown out, of course. But that just takes a couple of more Democrats in our state legislature, and there we go. Give them some support. They're doing the heavy lifting in California right now. calgunsfoundation.org. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just people, you know, everyday Joe citizen doesn't think like a criminal, and thank goodness. You know, that's why we have a decent society that we live in. But when ridiculous laws like this come into play, you have to try and think like a bad guy. You know, I spent many years working undercover, many more than I would have liked to. But to do that, you got to start thinking like a bad guy, act like a bad guy, and you got to put the mindset of a bad guy into your own mindset while you're still trying to be a cop. So while you're doing this, you have to think how bad guys think. If this law is passed and the decent law-abiding citizens have to turn in their magazines that carry more than 10 rounds, what do you think the bad guy's going to say? Hey, this guy's only got 10 shots. We can take our 15, 16, 17 round magazines and we can take out anybody we want to, because they're criminals. Criminals are not going to turn in their extra capacity guns or magazines. They're going to take advantage of the poor people who are obeying this stupid law and carry guns, like they already do, with more bullets than the people that they're going to go and rob have. And so that puts them at an advantage. You're giving the bad guys the advantage in a confrontational situation, that when they attack a citizen who may very well be armed, but with only 10 bullets, they've got 15, 16, or 17. How stupid is that? Enough said.
Yeah, it obviously doesn't make any difference. Yeah, anyway, let me do a couple closing things first, and then I got one more little story I want to do. Gun shows coming up. Western Trails Gun and Knife Show, July 8th and 9th at the Texas Station on Rancho. Nice little show. Claude Hall's original Las Vegas Gun Show, July 15th and 16th at the Sports Center on Sunset. We will be there as we usually are, next to the NRA table as you come in the door. If you have questions or comments or want to ask me something in person, I'd be happy to talk to you then. So you don't have to send me an email that says, I got this Sten gun my grandfather brought back from Bataan, and what should I do with it? The answer will be the same, but sending emails that say that is probably a bad idea. Then we got Crossroads of the West coming up July 29 and 30 at the Reno Convention Center, and Crossroads of the West coming up August 26 and 27. We will be there here in Las Vegas. I have some passes for that. They're good at either one of those shows. If you're listening to this up north, they will get you into the Reno Convention Center Crossroads show, or the Las Vegas Crossman show at Cashman Field. So you can drop me an email, and I will mail you one of these passes to get you in. We are here every week on Fired Up on YouTube, and it is rebroadcast on 1400 AM radio KSHP Sunday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Next week, I've got local attorney Don Green on. He's a fighter of a lawyer, for those of you who watch this show. He's usually the guy you meet at the gun shows. And I've got some California laws coming up that I skipped. I'm very interested to see what he thinks of this case that Cal Guns Foundation is doing to stop the magazine ban. I'm sure that he is involved in that. So, you know, I think I've got about 4 or 5 minutes. So this last story just annoys me no end. You're all familiar with the story. This is WYFF, which is NBC TV4, reported on the 23rd in Shelbyville, Tennessee. You all know the story. 2 escaped convicts murdered a pair of correction officers, and they were captured Thursday night after a homeowner and a neighbor came out and saw them at gunpoint and held them at gunpoint. There was offered by the Georgia Bureau of Identification, the Georgia State Police, FBI basically. They had $130,000 offered for information leading to the arrest of this Ricky DuBois and Donnie Rowe. It was not originally clear if or when the reward would be distributed, but now it is. The GBI has split a $20,000 portion of the reward, equally between the 2 Tennessee households. This is the guy and his neighbor who came out when they saw these guys trying to steal their car, held them at gunpoint. Each family is being given $10,000 for helping the authorities catch these 2 guys from the prison bus escape in Georgia. What happened here, police in Shelbyville, Tennessee, got a call about a home invasion. Tennessee Highway Patrol spokesman, Lieutenant Bill Miller, said the homeowner in Christina was alerted that people were outside his home, and he saw the 2 men trying to steal his truck. Miller said the homeowner and his neighbor held the 2 at gunpoint until the Rutherford County Sheriff's Department could get there to take them into custody. So these are the 2 guys. They had killed 2 correction officers. They'd robbed several houses. They beat up a couple and stole their car. Then they stole another car. There was a whole crime spree here, if you remember. This was all over the news. There's a nationwide manhunt for these guys. The guys that arrested them, that stopped them, these 2 homeowners, had absolutely no idea that they didn't have guns with them. When they cracked up their car the last time, they lost their firearms. They had stuck in the car crashed and rolled. They ran away from the car. These 2 hero fathers' households had no idea these guys were no longer armed. They'd known they were murderers. It was all over the news. They went out there with their rifles and held them at gunpoint. And now the $130,000 reward, each of those guys is getting $10,000 of it. This is a crock. Who gets the other $110,000?
Right.
It was for any information leading to their arrest. They held them at gunpoint and called the cops. So who gets the rest of the $110,000? Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
Yeah,
nobody else caught them. There were hundreds of law enforcement officers involved in the search. These guys caught them.
I wonder how they're getting around that. There must have been some conditions on the original amount, but there it is. They were arrested, and I mean, was it, a lot of times we see these rewards are for arrest and conviction of. Okay, so that means that after the arrest, you're going to spend months waiting for the trial and another period of time waiting for the decision on the trial, and they go to the trial, and so you have to wait for that. So it's, I mean, you could be a year or 2 years waiting for your reward, and then if it's not convicted, you don't get the reward.
This one said, if I got the wording off of the website, it says offered for information leading to the arrest of Ricky and Donnie. Boom. Okay, sir, they're at gunpoint in the street in front of my house. Does that information leading to their arrest?
Yeah.
Unless you got to give it to MapQuest for looking up the address so the cops can get there. I'm just as wrong. There's got to be more to this, or it's really wrong. And if this is going to public servants who were on overtime trying to find these guys. They didn't find them. These two guys found them.
No, and I mean, that would be, that you couldn't do that anyway. I mean, you can't
get a reward if you're active law enforcement.
Right, you can't. That's no.
So where's the other 110 grand going? You know, I talked about this case on the show before they were captured. I think it might have been they heard Fired Up and they knew these two guys and they're going to send me 110,000.
That's it. Yeah, in fact, wait, I hear the guy knocking on the door. Here's the check.
A crock is the only way to describe this reward. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching, listening to Fired Up again. We'll be back next week, as I said, with Attorney Don Green and updates on this California thing. Be aware, it's already against the law to import magazines that hold more than 10 shots into California. We're getting a lot of people in trouble because they buy standard capacity magazines up here at gun shows and drive to California. Now they're all working fireworks. Now, don't blow up your house on
4th of July.
4th of July. The gun store, they have some blank ammunition for 38s and 9mm and so on. If you want to get some blanks that are safe to shoot up in the air but not directly at somebody, they have them there. Don't fire live rounds up in the air. Every year we get somebody hurt with one of those coming down.
Matter of physics.
You know, sooner you fire enough rounds in the air, you're going to hit somebody that doesn't deserve it. So be safe with your fireworks. And we'll see you next week. I got my button to push here. Now we got this all in control. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Phil, so much for coming in again.
Pleasure.
It's just dynamite to have you on. Thank you, folks. Good night.